Aloha, everybody. Mahalo for joining us on another episode of Optimize Your Na'au. I'm Dara, and this is David. And we are here today with Dina and Steve Kaniho, who, when you hear what they have to say about connection, about career, life choices, about the connections from past to present and future, you are going to be just blown away in this very heartfelt, very emotional, deep conversation that we get to share together, where they talk a little bit about their career changes. They talk about a little bit about their connection with the people that they have helped throughout their life. A lot about their connection with themselves and with each other. A little bit of parenting, kind of a little bit about everything, about family, about a little bit about trauma and the healing that goes with it. So please enjoy this beautiful conversation that we got to have with Steve and Dina.
Aloha, everybody. Welcome to Optimize Your Na'au podcast. And today we have a couple special guests, Dina Kaniho and Steve Kaniho. And Dina is our, certified special hypnotherapist. She's an energy shifter, high healer, and she had quite a journey, from where she started off as a nurse. But without stealing the whole story and whatnot, I'm gonna actually have you go ahead and introduce yourselves.
So I guess my health journey started probably before I even became a nurse. From a long time feeler, empath. As a child, I didn't really understand, didn't really have anyone to guide me. So I was constantly, I was the kid outside playing in the dirt with no shirt on, 3-4 years old, just always in nature, always trying to connect. And I didn't really understand that was my way of like grounding, coming back to center. Also just being able to like interact with other people in the world better until, fast forward 40 years later is when I really started to understand. But along the way, I've watched grandmother, different people in our family have some kind of connection to health and wellness. So my grandmother was a nurse. Her mother was actually a Portuguese healer. She came from Portugal, and people would come and see her to take care of like holy stomach and that kind. And, I don't know what the Portuguese term was for, bush. Bush is like the Portuguese version of holy stomach. And this grandmother that I never knew did all of these things, a lot of like witchery and herbs, and she would give people, and it was all, the lady on the street kind of will take you to her and she'll fix you, and they bring her offerings, that kind of stuff. And so that's, the stories that I would hear. Didn't like, it was intriguing, but I didn't really have like a role model. My grandma was my biggest role model, even though she was like a tiny little lady. 4'8", yeah. Gigi was 4'8", 4'9". I think eventually she shrunk. She was 4'8". But she was my role model, and the Western idea of healing was becoming a nurse. So fast forward, that's what I did, because that's what I thought that was the only way that I could fulfill my purpose. And as a nurse, I found a lot of opportunities. I found a lot of ways to help people, but it was very draining. It was very draining on me. It was difficult. I didn't feel aligned, and I felt kind of trapped, actually. And I would come home every night after a 12-hour shift sick, picking up other people's symptoms, come home with actual symptoms. And Steve would call me a hypochondriac, because how can you come home with somebody's symptoms? It's in your head, So I mean, so many transitions from childhood into following society and being that nurse, that kind of healer, until finally I came upon my own health challenge that really pushed the boundaries of what health and wellness was. And that was when everything changed. That was actually, I was experiencing things many years before, but wasn't plugged into it until like 2012, 2013. Couldn't get out of bed. He would have to carry me to the bathroom. Brain fog, just body going crazy. Lost like 20, 30 pounds in a short, maybe a month, a very short span of time. Thinking what Western society and Western medicine tells us, like, if that happens, well, you must have cancer or you must have, some other kind of, and just getting no answers. And I'm surrounded by these people who are supposed to be like the brilliant minds in Western medicine. And every time I would go in, all levels, all of my lab levels were fine. My blood pressure is good. My heart's strong. Did all the tests. What's wrong with you? It's in your head. Go see a psychiatrist. Meanwhile, my joints are in pain. My heart is palpitating. I'm in constant pain, like physically, mentally, emotionally, to the point where I really said out loud to Steve, if this is the way that I'm going to live, then I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Right.
And after hearing myself say that, it was like, I had to make a choice. Am I going to fight and live and figure this out myself? Or am I going to like give up and leave my husband and children without a mom? And I mean, Steve can attest to that, but just to kind of wrap it up, that catapulted me into taking my health and wellness into my own hands, my own nutrition. It was like a lot of searching on the computer, finding many stories like mine, then finding, like what we still call alternative medicine, which is actually true medicine, right? So plant medicine,
Right.
Like Ayurveda, yoga, which was something that I was already doing, acupuncture, chiropractic care, naturopath, all of that stuff, and just building this team of healers around me to help guide my journey and changing my ideas and my thoughts about what health and wellness really means. And from there, this journey started. Natural Aloha, my body care company, because it was the first thing that I was able to express. If I make these things and I put good things on my body as well as good things in my body, then I can feel more aligned, better. I would have more better days than not. And then through that, I started to really understand my passion and my gift for helping people beyond and, shifting their energy. People would come up, whether they bought something or not, and leave. I feel so much better. I would get emails like, just talking to you, I felt so much better. And I was thinking, it's the knowledge, right? Empowering them. And it was part of that, but it was more, which I still didn't understand to several years later. And it just kind of escalated and built. And the more I was open, the more I would learn, until I finally was gifted the knowledge. Like I was ready to see that this is what you are meant to be doing. You're meant to work with people in, hypnotherapy capacity. That's something that helped me a lot in several different things. Like high stress job, I used to smoke, I used to eat terribly, and it's like, why do I feel like crap? I wonder why. We still see people today. I don't feel good. Let me take this pill. No matter how many pills you take, if you don't change what you put in and on your body, it's only going to help so much or not. So that's how everything kind of evolved. I believe everything's still evolving. We're always changing. Like when we work together, there's always something new.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Whether you guys are teaching me or I'm teaching you or we're just discovering together. And he's been with me along for the ride, like every single step of the way.
It's a little struggle.
A believer or not, you know, he
Yes.
helped me to see. And really, Steve was the nature man before I was
Yeah.
the nature girl. You know, everything that I was doing Western medicine, he was like, you don't, why are you doing that for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, always questioning to the point where it was not easy. It was
Yeah.
a battle where, you know, sometimes it was head to head when it came to the kids. Like, I don't want my kids to have antibiotics, you know, and I was from this school of thought that, well, this is the way that you do it. How else do you think they're going to get better? And he was like, they don't need that. You know, the body's going to fight it off. So, yeah, I guess I can turn it over to you and you can share your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like, where did those beliefs come from where they didn't need antibiotics? What is your...
You know, even growing up, you know, from when I was a small kid, I always felt like you give in this immune system. I don't think I understood the whole immune process within the body and how it's what you're given to naturally fight things off. But I just almost like instinctively knew, like, you get sick, you deal with it physically, get over it, get stronger. That was always my mentality, like, behind that train of thought was like. And then once we started having kids, so I was always like, didn't like medication, didn't like taking pills. You know, even I still remember as a kid getting beaten because I was spitting those pills out. And like I was like literally forced to take it. But instinctively I knew it wasn't good for me because I'm like, hey, you know what, I can do this naturally by myself. And tell you a little story that when I was 19 years old, I was playing football up in the mainland, and I had an injury, and I had surgery, and I had gotten sick. Ended up, I don't know how it happened. I just kind of determined it was from the surgery itself, and so I ended up getting hepatitis A. So, you know.
From the surgery.
Wow.
Which is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as the days and weeks went by from the time I had my surgery, I started feeling like really sick, loss of appetite. Noticed like I was basically jaundiced. My eyes were turning yellow. My skin was just like, I was just feeling terrible. And I went to the doctor and he told me, hey, you know, run some tests. Told me what I had. So he had his recommendations, you know, like, hey, do this, do that. I said, no. I said, I can get over this with my mind. And he looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, oh, my mind's going to get me over this. And I ended up losing. So I went from 250 and I dropped to 160.
Wow.
Yeah, I lost 55 pounds, no appetite, right? And so I told myself, hey, you know what? I got to feel worse to feel better. And it just kind of compounded. And at one point I was like, ooh, I was getting a little worried. You know, I was like skinny, always cold, you know. But one night it just clicked. You know, we went to a baseball game. And, you know, I mean, typically throughout the day I'll eat like half a sandwich. That was for the entire day. And that was kind of like, I had to kind of force it down. So anyway, we went to this baseball game, and one of my friends, his girlfriend, was going to the concession stand. So I said, hey, gave her some money. I said, hey, get me 3 hot dogs. She looked at me and she's like, you can't even finish one. I said, no, I think I can. Sure enough, I mean, not the best food choice at the time, but came back and I just pounded those 3 hot dogs. And as soon as I did that, I said, I'm over it. And boom, sure enough, 2 weeks later, I put 40 pounds on.
Oh.
And I just felt like completely different. And I'm like, so right at that point, I knew I was over it. I'm like, I'm healed physically, mentally, and boom, I just...
So was it the mind or was it the hot dogs?
Yeah, definitely, I mean, it was at that point where I, you know, like I say, you have a little, that almost like a trigger point where it just boop, And that's, for me, getting over that was right there when I ate those hot dogs. I knew in my mind, in my heart, I was done. I was over it. And sure enough, then I became, back to myself. And probably within a month, I was back to my normal weight. And feeling good, and all the yellow was gone.
Wow.
And the doctor, he's oh, you're lucky. I said, I ain't lucky.
Yeah.
I said, I got this. This is the strongest medicine in your mind. I said, I don't know what it is, but I've always believed in the body-mind connection, from small kid time. And so that's why I think with her and I, when we had our kids, we still small kind battle a little bit, because it's like she wants to do this. My kids get sick. She wants to give them something to eat, spray something, give them a syrup. I'm
that
like,
was
That was what we were taught.
Yeah,
Right?
that's what we were
Medical.
taught, and that's
Yeah.
that's what I grew up with for most of my life. Except we didn't really go to the doctor. It was like, we'll do all this stuff over the counter, and but he would, they're congested. It might sound gross to a lot of people, but he would just suck it out.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
going to give them this stuff. Like, the whole reason why it's still in the body is because they don't know how to blow their nose, right? They don't know how to expel it or expectorate it. And he was like, the kids still think that it's gross. Now there's all these fancy little contraptions, right?
Yeah.
It's like a
Do it.
syringe
Yeah.
with the long thing, and Steve's just like, just suck it out. It's like, what's the big deal?
But the trick is mouth and nose same time.
Same
right?
time, exactly. So
cover both.
Yeah.
and then they feel like they can't breathe, right?
Yes.
Because literally you're not only sucking that out, you're sucking out whatever
Yeah.
energy that's not good in the body.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Your story is, the first thing that came to me was that it was almost like you had a rebirth
Yeah. I got that
of
too.
like,
For sure.
whatever it was that you, whatever old self or whatever, like that was the first thing that came to me. But we know, you've also, you had a very stressful career, right? That, that was very reputable, right? It was seen as you were doing really good work.
Yeah.
What about you? What kind of career did you end up having?
Well, I ended up retiring as a police officer I served, I was a department just short of 26 years, so, like 21 days shy of 26 years, but that's the career path I chose. I think at the time, it's like I was working in construction. I was like, looking for a job, something that's going to be good, something that I'll enjoy doing, something that I would be good at. And I was decided, hey, you know what? I was thinking either fireman or police officer. So I'm like, applied, got in, got lucky, and had some actually had some people help me with the process getting in, because you had to take like a psych eval test, a psychological test, which was like, I still remember 575 questions, and then you had this oral evaluation by this expert psychologist, right, who's going to judge, who's going to tell me who I am from analyzing these questions I answered, right? Probably half of them I was lying about, but so anyway, that was a process. Then you go through the whole physical part of it, and then you go through the academy, and and I enjoyed the job. I love what I did, and I felt I was really good at my job.
You were.
I don't want to say good. I said I was great at my job.
And you were fair. You were different.
Yeah, I had a completely different mindset than a lot of the guys in the department, because I grew up a lot differently than a lot of these guys. I grew up fighting a lot. That was my whole, training, and doing stuff like that. So my mentality was never one of authority. Like a lot of guys, you get the badge, you get the gun, they're like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna go out there and be a bully. You know what I mean? Like, I was a complete opposite, because I'm like, that's the easy part of the job. The hard part of the job is making my job easy by treating people good, and not automatically putting people in a light of suspicion. So I always that was always the approach I took, especially when I worked in patrol. You know, they always say the patrol officer is the most deadly part of the job, because a lot of times you're going into situations where complete unknowns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be on your toes. You got to be thinking. So, and I think that's where I thrived in, because I had good instincts, and I always tried to treat people good. And that was always my mentality. Like, hey, I might have had a shitty day the day before, but when I come back to it, hey, you know, a new day, you know, get back on track. And so that's kind of how I took my career in stride, you know. And I would even tell the young guys coming in, I'm like, hey, you know what? You know, like, I'll give you a little example. Like, anytime you'd stop somebody for a traffic violation, whatever, red light, speeding, and I learned this from an old timer, and he says, what's going to really help you and make your job easy is, no matter what the infraction is, always start off with an apology. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. So I said, okay, give me an example. I said, okay, say I clock a guy for speeding. He's going 25 over the speed limit. Yeah, pull him over. As soon as I go up to his car, this is how I start the conversation. He says, I'm sorry for stopping you, but this is the reason why. And just those small little words, it's like, not only myself, but it changes like, oof.
Wow, that one came up.
Oof. I don't know what happened on that. But, you know,
Who are you thinking about?
Just the guy that told me about it.
Can you share, like, who? You don't have to share his name, but who he was to you? He changed your life?
It just kind of, you know, helped change my approach. Oh. He just made me realize, because, like, for me, that was the easiest part of my job. Hey, somebody wants to battle, oh, right up my alley.
Right.
That was the easy part of the job for me, but it was just, you know, this guy made me see things in a completely different light. And starting with, you know, just simple stuff like this, you know.
Starting with compassion, maybe leading with compassion
Yeah.
instead of leading with, you know, the ego.
Aggression, yeah.
Aggression, yeah.
Right.
Because, you know,
That's
later.
fear,
yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because later on, like, he was an older guy, right? And so at the tail end of his career. But then when I talked to guys who really knew him, like, dude, this guy was just like you. Like, you know, he was one always ready to battle, but, you know, it's almost like, what was that? I believe it was Sun Tzu. He said, train for war, but pray for peace. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, and there's a lot of guys that go into that job with the opposite mindset.
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah,
Right?
for sure.
Guns blazing,
I've seen
24/7.
I've
And
seen that big time.
they're going in to prove something
Right.
to themselves or to someone else,
Right.
or also just trying to feel something
Yeah.
that they never had.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we approach things from that perspective, like, I need to prove something, or I need to look good,
Yeah.
or somebody look at me like I want to be famous, you kind of miss out on your purpose,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So I think bringing it back to what I guess you guys, you know, originally asked, or just even the whole Na'au podcast, right,
Mhm.
is really about purpose. When we can align with our purpose, it changes everything, right? No matter what I did as a nurse, it was never going to be fulfilling because I wasn't able to empower people
Mm-hmm.
as a Western medicine nurse.
Yeah.
But doing what I do now, helping people see that they can shift their energy, and energy is contagious, right? You can walk into some place and everybody is on edge, not feeling well,
Yep.
and bring your good energy and not only like share what you have, but channel that energy from the universe that is abundant and well, and infuse that, allow the energy to just change from there, and people are walking out differently. Look, we've experienced it here when we've had retreats.
Yeah.
How many times did I say we should take pictures of everybody before and after? Because everybody comes in, you know, shoulders little slump, head's kind of down, everybody's tired, like, oh, you know, like I had a bad week or whatever. And then we start and, you know, they go on the different tech, you know, we do some energy shifting in the room privately, one-on-one. And by the time they're leaving, they're like, that was fabulous. I mean, we see that all the time. That's why we all do what we do. And I think same for you, right? Somebody gets stopped. The first thing they're doing is they're thinking the worst, right? We've had that experience actually in Tennessee where we got pulled over because we were speeding. Like we weren't even thinking about, we're talking and, you know, we weren't like Indy 500 speeding, but we were just going over the speed limit a little bit. And the first thing we thought was, great, now our insurance is going to go up, right?
Yeah.
And we were lucky because the guy comes walking up and, you know, there's a stigma for local people, like, okay, they're going to look at us, we're brown, we're different, they're going to be like, here's your ticket, beat it. We have no idea what happened. Like I just told him, I said, just take a deep breath, whatever happens, you know, we get what we get. And he surprised us.
Yeah.
This guy surprised us and he came, I don't know, do you remember exactly what happened, like what he told us? Did he go back to the car? Did he ask you if you were an officer?
No, so what he's doing is he's obviously going back to the car because that's what we'll do in our job. You're running checks on not only the vehicle, but mostly the person.
Right.
Stop.
Right.
And then he's probably doing like an extensive search, like because we're in the mainland. Not only in the mainland, we do it here too. It's called an NCIC thing, right? Where they're looking like nationwide if you're right for something.
For sure.
Right. And so normally those checks, they don't take very long, you know. So when I saw him coming back, I was thinking to myself, okay, one of two things. It's probably easy. Their ticket system is really, really quick where you just check, boom, and done. Or he did his checks and everything is good. So I'm hoping for the latter, right? Hey, good, you're going to slow it down or whatever. Because when he first approached me, I kind of had ego. And I was thinking, oh, this guy is like a speed trap right here. Because I've seen the area. Right? But honestly, I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
Because it goes from 55 and it drops to 45 like in a short distance. And so we're talking. And so
that's like, you know, the pulley, right?
So
going
like,
through and they're shooting the laser into
the tunnel.
Into the tunnel. That's happened to me before.
Same.
As you're coming down the hill.
Yeah.
Like too, same.
Yep.
So from the 55 zone, I normally do 60, and I just hold that. I'm like, hey, 5 over, I'm good. But I held that 5 over all the way to the 45 zone. And so when I got stopped, I was like, oh, my ego kind of kicked in. And I was like, and exactly what she was saying, I was thinking, oh, insurance, you know, this and that. I'm like, 3 years, and I'm thinking, oh, no, I'm just irritated. So when he came up,
and I could feel it, and I was like, let's not do this. Let's just shift. Let's just shift. Hope for the best, because you know what the thing is, it was our bad, you know. So you just accept it. I said, when he comes up, just say, when he asks you, just say, I'm sorry. Yeah. When like, you know, approach it humbly. Let's try something different. And that's what he did. And what did he do? He gave us a warning.
Yeah, he said, yeah, I'm not going to rate you a citation. Just, you know, just be cognizant of your speed. I'm like, and I tell you what, every time I drive there, boom, dropping down the speed. Because I learned.
Lesson learned, yeah.
You know, I'm not like
but we
guys.
were like, woohoo, like we won the lottery, but it was like in real time.
Yeah.
We practiced the things that, you know, we try and practice when we're meditating. Or, you know, like when I teach yoga, I always tell people, we're practicing for real life situations. We're not just doing this, you know, because, now we can put our forehead to the ground. We're doing this so that when we're in a situation where we feel like our back is up against the wall, how can we present ourselves? How can we feel better or be better? And those kinds of things our real life experiences. So that was like a win for us. It was huge for
Yeah,
him.
because
sure.
you know, when he told me that, I was like, honestly, I just kind of felt that pressure inside me, like kind of go down. And I told him, I said, hey, you know, I said, I really want to thank you, you know, for not doing that. I said, you have no idea how happy I am that I'm not getting a ticket, because just because everything that comes with it.
Yes.
You know? And
Yeah.
it's funny because when I was working, right, and I remember getting called in by my lieutenant, you know, saying, hey, you know, he'll talk to my sergeant, right, because he doesn't really want to talk to me because of my personality and my and more so my beliefs, right?
Sure.
Even though in the capacity that I work, I still had my beliefs on how things should be handled, right?
Right.
So he would talk to my sergeant and pester him like, hey, you know, Kaniho's not giving any citations, blah blah blah, this and that. And so my sergeant, who was my supervisor but also my good friend, I'm like, hey, why does he keep bothering you? I said, you know what, I'll go talk to him. So I go into his office and I'm like, I said, hey, Lieutenant, you know, my sergeant, his name was John. I said, you know, you keep bothering John and asking him why I don't cite people. I said, I got tons of opportunity. I said, but let's have a seat and let me tell you why I don't tag people. And I started going from A to Z, right? Talking from the initial stop, how you're raising somebody's blood pressure, right? They're getting irritated, they're pissed or whatever, right?
They're already having a bad day.
Different range of emotions, right? And especially I used to work day watch. So most of the people I'm stopping, they're going to work.
Yeah.
To work, to probably a job they don't like or enjoy, to provide for their family who probably sometimes don't appreciate what they do. So I'm thinking like, and I'm explaining this to him, right? I'm going from A to Z, like I said, you know. So I'm telling him this. So I said, so now on top of that, I give him a ticket. Affects his insurance, affects his whole attitude for the day, goes home, possibly beats his kids. Because, you know, right? So after I did all the explanation, I said, that is why I don't tag. I said, unless absolutely necessary. And he looked at me and he said, he goes, okay, I'll accept that. I said, you better, because that's the only explanation you're going to get, you know, and left it at that. You know, I said, there's other ways to enforce things without giving people citations and fining them, you know, monetarily. And so I said that.
Or forcing, I mean, just kind of forcing these laws or beliefs onto people. It's like, you know, leading with compassion. And that's one of the things that we have started doing more, like with our own families, with our own friends, even in difficult situations. Because let's face it, like some of the most difficult connections we have are family. Like it's so much easier for us to connect, and we connected instantly, right? And it's because our vibrations were on the same frequency. But that doesn't always happen like with family, right? And there's expectation. There's all these different like little threads of things that make relationships different and difficult. And the hardest thing I think that we can do is start to lead with compassion with our family members, because they have so much expectation. That's, you guys know, like we've been traveling back and forth since we moved. And every time I come home, there's a new realization. There's a new thing that gets healed.
What was that term you told me the other day for that? What you were just talking about? You had used a word to describe it. Oh my God, I can't think of it.
You will. It'll come to you. I'm just thinking like in our own situation, we came back here, you know, we had a loved one in our family that passed, and that's not the easiest situation, right? People are anxious. Anytime someone passes, their human body passes, it brings to light all of our mortality. Right? It doesn't matter how old or young you are, whether you're well or not, you know, and tensions can be high. And so I've really had to, this time around, learn how to elevate my compassion and know that, yeah, like I can still love you. You're going through that. However, I don't have to absorb. I don't have to accept.
Yeah.
I don't have to align with a belief that I don't believe in, but I can still love you exactly where you are. And that's the biggest thing that I think we can do when we are shifting our own energy or helping other people shift theirs. Because when people show up on my doorstep and even on yours, they feel like they're trapped and they feel like they have no way out, whether it's a physical illness because they got a diagnosis and they were told that that diagnosis can't be changed, it can't be healed. We know differently.
Sure.
Yeah, but they have to choose it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing about our job is empowering people to choose it, because you guys have all the best top-notch supplements and things here, but until they change it in their head that they want to be better, they want to feel better, they want to do better, then all the stuff that they take, even the best things, it'll help. It'll help a little bit, but they still got to choose it so that they can make like that full transformation.
Yeah.
And we're always transforming.
Yeah. Well, and going back to what Steve said, right? Power of the mind.
Yeah.
How you think and how you feel and actually living it, right? Like in a way, convincing yourself like this is not the reality, right? And creating a different reality for yourself.
Absolutely. Yes.
I actually think that's something that's got to be re-taught to people because they're so disconnected nowadays. Even not only in the younger kids, the younger generation, but you even see it in some of these older people, like carry that thing like it's an appendage, that phone. I'm like, oh, you know. So,
but that's something that is by design, right? Because the more distracted we are, the more disconnected we are
And
from
less aware.
ourselves and each other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's easier to text somebody something, but to actually show up in person and be, you know, how many times do you hear like, oh, let me know if you need something? There's really no meaning behind it. When there is a true connection, you can feel that, but it's not just let me know. It's like, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, let's do this. It's not just words. Like I always tell them, you know, words have so much power, have so much meaning.
Sure.
There's a reason why words and spelling are a thing, because in ancient times, you know, we talk about spells. Some people will be like, ooh, you know, like that's witchery, that kind of stuff. But
Right.
there's meaning when we say words out into the universe. We're putting that vibration out. So we do that easily for things that we don't want all the time, because that's what we're taught. We can do the opposite and start manifesting or start realizing the things that we really want. But we have to get into that frequency. It's easy for us to drop into low vibing frequency because I think we all kind of grew up like that. You know, it's hard to say this, but this is the truth. Growing up in Hawaii, we kind of always had that mentality like, oh, the white man did this to us. And it's really like, you know, there may be some truth to that, you know, but if you look in any like ancient civilization, there's always a power struggle of some sort. And, you know, without getting like political or getting too much into that, like my belief is that if we can be sovereign within ourselves, feel at home with who we are, then we can travel anywhere. We can be in any environment and we can still feel good and well. It doesn't matter what's happening around us. I mean, because there's always going to be war. There's always going to be famine. There's always going to be these negative things that are happening around us. But it's our kuleana to take responsibility for everything that happens in and around us. That's how we take our wellness into our own hands. That's how we take back our power, and we don't allow people to tell us you can or you cannot do these things that you know that are right for you.
Thank you for sharing all that. Like, super powerful from a power couple. You know, really making that connection between mind, you know, body, like you were saying, right? I know the word na'au comes to me when you guys were talking about what you were talking about, especially when you start to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that was
Mm-hmm.
real, bro. Thank you for being so, you know, transparent
Mm-hmm.
and vulnerable. Like that's powerful. Like, because there's a lot of us out there, especially as men, you know, that, that those kinds of connections, like true healing connections, to native connections is what we call it here.
Mm-hmm.
That make a huge shift within our own lives, and it does impact other people, and we notice this through the environment we create, the people we surround ourselves with, the kind of relationships that evolve between our significant other. And you see it within our own children too,
Mm-hmm.
as they grow, as you folks already know as well.
Oh.
And that's a true leader, bro. True leader, leading with compassion is what you guys were mentioning, and that's live, that's real.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I know, and we didn't even really get to talk about how we really met.
Yeah.
It was with Natural Aloha. I remember it was at some like ocean something expo at the Blaisdell.
Was it?
It was Blaisdell, but I think there was another one too. Might have been at, now that you talk about that, I think you did one event at the Marine Corps base one time, perhaps.
Really? We
did so many.
We did so many because
we used
at
to
that
go to
time
all
it was like, it was that mindset. Even though we were transitioning, it was, the mindset is, well, as a nurse, I was successful, with making money, like dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left for, many different reasons, mainly for health, and I started the business, then the business started to run me. And I lost again the focus of, well, why did I start that?
Yeah.
And it was really to heal the self. So we were like all over the place, right? Trying to chase the dollar because let's face it, living here, it's not cheap.
Yeah.
So, and we can all just do what we're meant to do, what our soul came here to do, but the human side of us still needs to pay a mortgage or a rent and eat and let's face it, if we like nice things, then we also have to be able to put in the work that's going to allow us to have these nice things beyond just our beautiful connections that we make. So we were kind of all over the place, but that was really our stepping stone to In Balance with Insight.
Yeah.
Which was actually Aloha R&R first, because, but it was through those connections that we would make and help people, they show up with eczema. Well, yeah, I have a salve that you can put on that and it's going to help. But if you don't want to flare up, then you need to look at decreasing wheat and dairy and teaching them about nutrition. Or is it stress that's causing that flare up, right? And having these conversations, like all of these things, these conversations would extend beyond the craft fair. It was, it was all pro bono work. And that's the part that I really loved. Like I loved making the products, helping people feel better. But then it was like, oh, there's this next step, this next level. And truthfully, I started to get burnt out because I was imparting what I thought people needed instead of what they were ready to take responsibility for. So I call it the savior's complex, where you're like, oh, I have all this knowledge. Let me share it with you. And they don't really want the knowledge. They want you to fix them. And in the beginning, I was like, yeah, I can fix anybody. Right. But then I was still getting burnt out. I was still feeling sick. I was, down for a few days after I would work with people. I was working with them. They weren't working with me because they didn't have any intention of, and he would tell me like, what are you doing? Right. Like I'm like making them these like care plans and like these natural care plans. Right. So I took my Western medicine knowledge, right. You build these care plans for them and you send it to them. And then they're grateful, they disappear, and then they resurface when they're struggling because they never implemented any of the things that you shared with them. And truthfully, I would get pissed off.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that I should have been mad at myself
Mhm.
because they didn't ask me for all of that.
Mhm.
They didn't want me to, I mean, they wanted me to fix them, but not in that way
Yeah.
because that way they had to work for it.
Yeah.
So, it took me a while to smarten up and understand that people have to choose it.
Yeah.
So, fast forward to many years later of doing this now, it's like I'm here, but you have to choose it. I'm not gonna tell you about it. I mean, we literally ran into friends yesterday and we were at Costco and someone said, "So what are you doing now? Just hanging out, nothing?" I said, That's exactly what I do. Because I told Steve, I said, if she doesn't know, then if I try to explain it, it doesn't help her. It doesn't help me. It was just easier. And it's one of the things that I'm really happy that I've grown into, this quiet confidence where I don't have to save people.
Yeah.
And whoever I do help, it's a blessing between them and me, because as I'm helping them, they're rippling out and they're helping other people. And we can't control it all.
Yeah.
When we try to be the loudest in the room, the biggest, the best, people don't hear it because they're not ready.
Yeah.
They'll show up when they are.
Yeah. Well, and you're not connecting.
Mhm.
Not
Right.
at all.
And that's what it sounds like, that you folks have evolved to this inner peace where there's nothing to prove.
Mm-mm.
There's nothing to justify. There's nothing for anybody to judge because you're not judging yourself anymore. Right. So it's like this quiet inner peace that, I mean, I can tell you, like meeting you, sitting here with you folks now, you are not the same person that we first met. You're not the same people that I first saw at those expos. And crazy enough, like I always saw you folks together. And I didn't know why I was always drawn to you. And I came up and be like, oh, I don't need deodorant and detergent.
Yeah.
But it took
No,
a
for sure.
while,
Yeah.
right? It took a while for our connection to really like solidify itself. I mean, God, once it did,
Oh yeah.
there's no turning
And then
back.
we found out all the back connections. Like
And then
we've
we
been
found
connected for
For
forever,
years.
for
So
years
Yeah.
and years.
Events
Yeah.
that we've been at.
What the
you know,
schools, like
the schools,
family,
yeah.
like
Right, right.
I know your family, and we have a school connection.
School
family.
connection. Yeah.
So
Yes.
yeah, it's like we were meant to connect, but when it was right,
Yeah.
because back then I wasn't ready for you guys.
Yeah.
And clearly you didn't need deodorant or detergent at that time. It's like, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, quick little plug though, if you don't
Yes.
mind. Like Natural Aloha, you can check out her stuff on Instagram, Natural Aloha. But like, talk about clean. Like
Yeah.
she goes the extra mile, and everything is handmade.
Yeah,
You're not
handmade.
gonna get a lot of products out there that are truly made by a healer, for a healer, and really providing the materials that we can utilize, that are either bioidentical or that can actually signal our own body's ability to heal, which is everything that we believe in as well.
Which now goes beyond detergent and deodorant,
Yes.
by the way. It's
For sure.
Yes.
teas,
Oh,
oils,
oils
and the oils.
crystals. I mean, everything that literally, we live in such an exciting time where all of these things are quantified. I mean, these things are measured, right? I mean, to say that, energy is not real is just uneducated. And so now, we have so many things that, I mean, if you don't mind me saying, prove,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because now, there's a lot of people that just need proof, but read the research, man. It's out there.
And there's so much scientific proof to just energy
For sure.
itself. You can look at how grounding changes your frequency. Thank goodness, because there's a lot of people that we've been taught, like, seeing is believing, like, show me the proof. And truthfully, the best things happen with blind faith and
Yes.
just going on your intuition and
Experiencing it.
just
Yes.
experiencing
Yes.
it, because you can read all the data, you can do all the things, but unless you experience it for yourself, you won't know. Like, I know that you guys are the same as me. I'm a firm believer that I cannot teach anything that I haven't experienced myself.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
any of the products that I make, it started in our home because it was something that we needed. Or I had an issue and I was looking for something and found this product and it is fabulous. So I'm going to share it with people. You know, it doesn't have to be something that I made, but something that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I share it. And you guys do the same thing, right? But you don't tell people, take this, and you've never tried it before, you know, because that's
right.
I never could do that. Even when I worked in medical sales, if I didn't believe in what I was promoting or selling, I couldn't work. That's just I couldn't align with it. That frequency of telling people, this is great, try it. And I've never tried it.
Yeah.
I can't. Like, I'll watch commercials and see that. And I was like, that's some BS because that person never tried that thing before. So how would they know? So don't tell me about it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so energy is real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now there's scientific proof.
Yes. Yeah. And there's actually some new studies that came out actually when our physical eyes are closed. That's, you know, for people who don't know how to really practice, you know, getting into certain mindsets and things like that. When your physical eyes are closed, that's when your pineal gland opens.
Yep.
So it's not, you know, it's practice to have all of it open at the same time, but it is easier when you have your physical eyes closed. You can block out some senses. Yeah.
That is true, because whenever I work with people, whether I'm working with them in person, Zoom, or distance, you guys know that I do distance sessions.
Yep.
A lot of times it's done eyes closed because taking out that visual stimulation just allows us to connect deeper back into the self.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we can have.
Oh, we can be here all.
We can be here all day.
For sure. For sure.
Did we answer all of your, like, I know everything's going to go and happen the way it's supposed to.
That was better than.
You know, we really didn't have to prompt as much.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like all our guests we had to prompt, but, you know, I mean, we could go on and on about all of our healing connections, whether it be through the people that we meet, the experiences that you shared, you know. I mean, that's just you just shared true definitions of what healing really is about, healing connections, in other words.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I know that, you know, some of the things that we want to make sure that we go over are the things that we always talk about with all of our guests, which is the name of our podcast, right? It's called Optimize Your Na'au. And the question we always ask is, how do you optimize your na'au? We can start with you.
Ooh. Okay, I'm going to try and keep it short.
It can be anything. You know, it doesn't have to be tech related or whatever. So
the short answer is tapping into my intuition and just leading from the na'au, leading from the gut and what it says. If we quiet ourselves, it's so easy to be shown what is right because you feel it. You know, I always tell people, if it feels good, do it. And if it doesn't, then don't. You don't have to make an excuse. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. If you live by that, I think that's the best way to optimize your na'au, because from there, everything is real and everything is true.
Yeah. What about you, Steve?
What was that?
I was just trying
like, how am I going to follow that?
Still trying to understand the question.
Well, you know, how would you optimize your na'au?
Mindset, right? That mindset you were talking about. Yeah. But it's coming from somewhere.
Coming from a space that you feel just connected. You know?
Her and I would always have these conversations like, you know, I would tell her something and she's like, how do you know? I go, I just know, you know. Kind of defensive, like, yeah, no question me, like, I know these things just instinctively.
He has a very natural connection that he doesn't acknowledge.
Well, there's different names for it. You know, I feel like you guys have a different name for the same thing, and it feels the same. I'm just saying, you know. But
he calls it instinct. You call it intuition.
It's just these are different things, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you know, like anything, right? I mean, I'm not a master of it, but I'm just a student of it. I'm still trying to learn. but also trying to take what she's trying to teach me. And so if that's considered trying to optimize it, just trying to take more of what she's been preaching and talking about and trying to implement it for myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's, sometimes I'll do stuff that's kind of irritate her,
You gotta.
I'll say
Maybe
something.
that's how you optimize your now.
That's how we optimize our
job.
now.
Part of my job.
You gotta push a little bit,
You gotta challenge a little bit, right? If you don't flex the muscle, how does it get strong? I think he
I'm just kidding.
optimizes really just by being more open. Because a lot of, like, when we've been married almost 31 years. So July 7/11 will be 31 years.
She don't even know 32.
I'm sorry, 32. 32 years. Our daughter will be 31.
Steve,
Usually women,
Steve,
they know
hey,
all the
wait,
little
wait,
details, but not in this
No, you
case.
and I, same page, bro. Same page. Well, he's short. Short a year. That's okay, but we're not counting.
I shorted a year. Okay.
Short a
Rewind.
day.
That's one more year.
Rewind.
That's one more year. That's
Sometimes
one
I
more
wish
year.
him happy anniversary was the wrong day.
At least I know the day. Maybe not
I
the
don't.
year.
Thank
I
you.
don't.
It's early. You know?
It's not hard to remember our day. It's super easy.
Well, yeah, because he picked
That's why we chose it.
7/11 because he likes to play craps.
So if I
That was
start
a previous life.
not remembering that date, that means something's going on with my mind.
So yeah, I shorted a year, maybe because the first year was kind of rough. So
Oh, the first decade.
true.
And all
The
me,
first-
all me, baby, all me.
Oh, healing is truth, man. Truth is healing. For
Can
sure.
you say that again for the
I
people
just-
in the back who didn't hear what you said?
You
The
can listen
first
to the
day,
recording over
the
there.
first
Rewind
decade
them.
was
Rewind
what?
them.
Was all you. What does that mean?
yeah, it
Can
was
you
a-
elaborate?
Well, I mean, if in the words of your daughter, you can say if they'll allow that. Should I say it? Oh,
How
wow.
PG is this show?
We're open.
Well, it's not. It's actually not swearing. Just
Oh, is
the
it?
choice of words might not be completely appropriate. But my daughter would always tell her, "Oh, mom, that's Dad's dumb dick days." Basically it. So yeah.
We're very transparent with the kids so that they can learn how to
Yes.
not follow in the footsteps and not redo
Yeah.
what we did.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, to your point, I mean, I listened to somebody talk and he would always say, I never knew what happened after my parents would argue. My dad would just leave. So he never knew. And then next time, he never knew how they resolved it because
Yeah.
next time they would see their parents, everything was
Everything
okay.
was fine.
But he was like, okay,
So-
wait.
but there was no
what is
resolution.
the process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that really changed my perspective on what to share and not to share with the kids, and that really shed some light.
I mean, we
on-
don't share everything, but it's like, yeah,
No,
this
we don't share everything.
is what,
either.
I mean, we're not trying to traumatize our kids, but as adults, they're adults now, and it's like they have their own relationship struggles. They will come to us.
Yeah.
And they'll ask us because they know, like, they did see us struggle.
Yeah.
They did see us separate at a time when we were struggling because it was more about competition than about partnership when we first, were together. I was having this conversation with my sister-in-law last night. It's like, I love where we all are now because, we're friends with our partner and we love to like lift each other up. Before it was all about like, who's better, who's in control.
Yeah.
That's what we learned. I mean, it was like whoever was the loudest, whoever walked out first, whoever said, I don't care what you think, I'm going to go do whatever I want. And now it's like, there's true connection, there's true caring, there's a willingness to be vulnerable and go deeper. And that's what we want for our kids so that our grandkids can learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not trying to repeat the same, bad patterns that we saw. It was like, well, that's how it always is. That's how it is. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that way.
And then your kids as parents, like they'll go through their own journey.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and develop their own methods of how they want to raise their children, right?
Yep.
It's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Parents,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
you know.
Yes, yes. Well, we can't thank you folks enough for both. I know it wasn't planned that Steve was going to be here, but we're so grateful because that was such a
glad I
beautiful
could sit in.
conversation. Yeah. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thank you.
And
You were just gonna be my chauffeur and drop me off, and
Oh, no way.
you know.
That's what I thought.
No
Yep.
way. No way.
no, but really, you know, and last minutely, you know, we asked Steve to be on because, you know, again, we're close with them and we feel like this was such a valuable conversation. There's so many things relationship wise, you know, that you folks have been through in one lifetime. I mean, it's crazy to think about. And you're still together and you still
Oh,
like
yeah.
each other.
It was
And we
crazy.
haven't even
survived it.
talked about all the other lifetimes that we've been together.
Right.
Yes.
That's for a different show.
That's for a different, for a different episode.
It's called the Greek fisherman.
But really, you know, mahalo for being here and being so open and vulnerable. Really.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you. For
Thank you.
having us. Awesome.
So again, as I said, you know, you guys have heard all the amazing things accomplishments that Dina brings, you know, to us as human beings on Earth. And I'd like to thank you guys for being here again today. And you can check her out on at In Balance with Insight, and also at Natural Aloha on Instagram. Yeah, services are on heal.me as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you can subscribe on Patreon.
Patreon. Yep, I have some free things that I do on Patreon. And there's also a subscription
Mhm.
where I share meditations or energy updates.
Yeah.
And also I do a free the Energetic 411 on a blog, and that goes out every Sunday except yesterday because we're here and
Yep.
we're doing a lot of different things. We flew in and we hit the ground running. We haven't really stopped yet. So
Yep.
that will resume in a couple weeks. But yeah, the Energetic 411 is fun.
Yeah. And folks, just subscribing to her email list is so valuable.
I'll just be honest, like it just comes at the time that
You need it.
you need it,
Yep.
for sure.
Yeah.
I would have to agree because I'm just the channel. So I'm not taking credit for it.
Yeah,
Well, mahalo again.
Thank you.
appreciate you
Thank you.
folks.